On a cold day in Manhattan, January 7th, 1904, Louise Boldt died at age 42. For months, illness had weakened her heart. That day, it finally gave out. Within hours, a telegraph carried a short order north along the Hudson and up the St. Lawrence River to a small island scattered with tools, scaffolding, and fresh-cut stone. The message was simple: stop all construction. On Hard Island, a name chosen for love as much as for shape, around 300 workers were building a 6-story private castle with 120 rooms and nearly 44,000 square feet of interior space. They had labored for years on towers, arches, and halls of pink-gray granite brought from a nearby quarry. When the foreman read the message, chisels went silent. Painters set down their brushes. Carpenters placed saws on sawhorses and stood still. Then, in a quiet line, the workers left the island. The project had been planned as a grand gift from George Boldt, a hotel genius who had once been a poor immigrant, to his wife, Louise. The castle was meant to be given on Valentine's Day, a stone and steel promise of love. But after Louise's death, George Boldt never returned. The unfinished building stayed behind like a paused heartbeat. From busboy to hotel king, the story of the castle begins far from the Thousand Islands, inside the crowded kitchens of New York City. In 1864, a boy of 13 stepped off a ship from Prussia. His name was George Carl Boldt, born on April 25, 1851, on the island of Rügen in the Baltic Sea. Back home, he had seen summer resorts and old castles that touched the sky. In America, he had nothing. No money, no English, and no family at his side. He found a job in a dockside hotel doing the lowest tasks. As a busboy, he cleared tables, scrubbed pots, carried trash, and slept in a basement room. The pay was tiny, but he watched carefully. He learned what many people missed. A great hotel isn't only about buildings or food, it's about how people feel. If guests feel important and cared for, they come back and they tell their friends. By his early 20s, George had moved up to kitchen management. The work was long and heavy, and the pay still wasn't great. He tried his luck in Texas, but returned poorer than before. Back in New York, he took another kitchen job and kept learning. Then a new door opened. In 1876, a respected club steward named William Carr needed someone strong and steady to manage the dining room of the Philadelphia Club, the oldest and most exclusive gentlemen's club in America. The members were the city's old money families, quiet, private, and used to perfection. George accepted the offer and moved to Philadelphia. At the club, he learned the quiet rules of elite society. Service should anticipate needs. Discretion is absolute. Beauty should never shout. He did the job well, and there he met William Carr's daughter, Louise Augusta Carr. She had grown up around hospitality, design, and taste. With her father's approval, they courted, and on June 14, 1877, George married Louise. He was 26, she was 17. What made their union special was not money. Louise was not an heiress, but partnership. They would build everything together, a small hotel, a big idea. By 1881, the couple had saved enough to take a risk. George bought the Bellevue Hotel at Broad and Walnut Streets in Philadelphia. It was more a serious restaurant than a true hotel, but it was theirs. Louise transformed the experience with ideas that seem simple today but were bold then. Fresh flowers on every table, soft candlelight, more space between tables for privacy, and a clean, graceful look from the moment guests walked in. She also understood something many businessmen ignored. Wealthy women wanted beautiful public places outside the home where they could meet, host, and be seen with dignity. The Bellevue became that place. The food, led by chefs whom George paid well, was excellent. But people talked about Louise's touches, the feeling that this room was made for them. Word spread. Soon, the city's elite were regulars. There is even a story that the Boldts shipped Philadelphia terrapin to Queen Victoria, a sign that their reputation had crossed the ocean. George then bought the Stratford Hotel across the street, controlling both corners of a busy intersection. With competition gone and taste on their side, the Boldts were now a force. How New York's elite opened a bigger door. Powerful New Yorkers visited Philadelphia often and booked tables at the Bellevue. One of them was Abner Bartlett, a real estate agent who worked with William Waldorf Astor, heir to one of America's richest families. Bartlett noticed George's management and Louise's design instincts. He told Astor about the couple. In 1891, William Waldorf Astor began planning a new kind of hotel on Fifth Avenue in New York, bigger, grander, and more refined than anything in America. He needed the right leader. He invited George to come to New York and run it. There was one problem. The Astor family was at war with itself. John Jacob Astor IV, Mrs. Astor's son, disliked his cousin William Waldorf. Both owned land next to each other on Fifth Avenue. Each planned to build a rival hotel, both using the same architect, Henry Hardenberg. Society drama was about to meet skyline design. Despite the risk, Fifth Avenue was still a residential zone. George said yes. He would need to raise $100,000 just to furnish the place. He trusted Louise's taste to make the new hotel feel like a private palace rather than a noisy business. The Waldorf opened on March 13, 1893, in the middle of a national economic crisis. Stress nearly broke George, but he held on. The Waldorf offered exclusive calm for those who could afford it. During hard times, the very rich often spend more to show they're untouched. The hotel became a success. Then John Jacob Astor IV opened the Astoria next door in 1897. George did something few could have pulled off. He convinced both cousins to merge operations. A corridor joined the two buildings. The Waldorf Astoria was born, the largest hotel in the world with over 1,600 rooms. It quickly became the address for presidents, tycoons, weddings, and deals. Everywhere, Louise's quiet influence showed. She insisted on fresh flowers daily, soft lighting that flattered faces, tasteful rooms that felt welcoming, and signs that respected women as equal guests. She removed ladies' entrances and let women walk in through the main doors, small changes that sent big messages. The hotel also pushed new ideas that are now standard: room service, famous dishes shaped by Oscar Cherky, known as Oscar of the Waldorf, and sauces and salads that spread nationwide. The New York Times later wrote that George was more responsible than any other person for the modern American hotel. By the late 1890s, he was one of the highest paid employees in the country and also held profitable leases. Estimates of his fortune range from $15 and $25 million then, hundreds of millions in today's money. The Boldts lived in suites at the Waldorf Astoria, sent George Jr. to Cornell, and Clover to the Spence School. They had climbed from basement kitchens to the top of American society. Why they looked north. Even with success, life inside a famous hotel is tiring. You are always on, always fixing, judging, choosing, and hosting. George remembered the quiet islands and castles of his childhood. Louise wanted a place that was private and theirs. In the summer of 1895, they visited the Thousand Islands, an area of more than 1,800 islands along the St. Lawrence River, where wealthy families built summer homes on private land, surrounded by water. Unlike Newport's stage-like social life, the Thousand Islands felt personal. Families could sail, fish, picnic, and read without an audience. The Boldts stayed at a grand hotel, but George longed for something that didn't need a reservation desk. They looked at islands for sale. Many were taken. Then they heard about Hart Island, about 5 acres near Alexandria Bay, with a cottage built by Congressman E. Kirk Hart. The land had just changed hands, but within days Louise bought it herself. The recorded price was $1, likely a legal number, not the true cost. Once the papers were signed, George altered the spelling to Hart Island. He even had the shoreline reshaped so that, from above, it looked like a Valentine heart. He wanted the symbolism to be clear. This was a place for love, not just a summer address. They spent summers there using the original cottage and slowly adding improvements. Meanwhile, George purchased more land, especially on Wellesley Island, where he built a farm, a golf course, polo fields, stables, tennis courts, and cottages for friends. He hosted with joy, but Hart Island remained the most special place, smaller, closer, and private. As George Jr. and Clover grew, they swam, rowed, and explored. Louise, who had spent 20 years designing beautiful spaces for other people, finally had a place to design for herself. A castle for Valentine's Day. By 1899, the cottage felt too small. The Boldts did not want just more rooms. They wanted a true home where the family could gather in comfort and invite guests without turning it into a hotel. Louise dreamed in detail, fine light, good flow from room to room, gardens that felt European but didn't fight the local landscape. George made a decision that matched his boldness and his heart. He would build a castle, not just a mansion called a castle, but a design inspired by the Rhineland towers and keeps he remembered from Prussia. He hired the Philadelphia firm G.W.&W.D. Hewitt, the same architects who would design his huge Bellevue Stratford Hotel in Philadelphia. The instruction was clear: design the grandest private castle in America. Louise reviewed plans and gave strong input on layouts, lighting, and finishes. The goal was not a showpiece for strangers. It was a functional family home with beauty and strength. The plan called for a 6-story main building with multiple towers, 120 rooms, and a footprint around 170 by 160 feet. The exterior would be built from rose-colored granite quarried from nearby Oak Island, which George also bought for the project. The budget was set at $2.5 million, well over $80 million in today's value. George could afford it. He chose Valentine's Day 1905 as the symbolic date to unveil the finished home to Louise, an entire island estate. The main castle was only part of the idea. George planned a complete island estate, a yacht house on Wellesley Island tall and long enough to hold large boats, including a 104-foot houseboat named La Duchesse, with room for dozens more watercraft. A powerhouse on Hart Island disguised as a medieval tower, but built to hold a steam generator that would supply modern electric light to every room and walkway. The Ulster Tower, a playful guest house inspired by a German defense tower, with a bowling alley, billiard room, library, bedrooms, a kitchen, and a shell room for dancing under a round ceiling. A dramatic water entrance arch with a drawbridge so visitors arriving by boat would feel they were passing into a private kingdom. Italian gardens with pools, statues, a swan pond, a dovecote, terraces, and walking paths, designed according to Louise's taste for order, color, and grace. Work would happen from spring to fall each year. Winters on the river were too harsh for transport. 300 workers were hired. A small city of barracks, workshops, and docks appeared almost overnight. Moving a house across the ice. The existing 30-room cottage sat where the main castle needed to rise, so workers dismantled it during the winter when the St. Lawrence River froze. They hauled the parts across the ice to Wellesley Island, rebuilt it, and made it the Thousand Islands Country Clubhouse. Later, it became the Hart House Inn. Now, the island was clear. Barges carried granite blocks, lumber, and steel. The Oak Island quarry cut stone to measure. Everything had to be planned in advance. There were no quick supply runs to a mainland hardware store. George, who ran the Waldorf Astoria like a conductor with a baton, applied the same logistics to the island: schedules, teams, standards. By the end of 1900, the support buildings had made dramatic progress. The yacht house rose to more than 50 feet high and stretched 160 feet in length, with 3 giant bays, later 4. The powerhouse foundation was laid, and its round walls began to climb. The Ulster Tower reached its 90-foot height, purposely crooked and slanting outside, but cheerful and modern inside. The waterside arch took shape. In the center of Hart Island, the castle's massive foundations were set and the steel frame began to rise. Stone, light, and hidden hearts. During 1901 and 1902, the castle's exterior grew fast. The granite, pinkish in sunlight and tough in winter, was placed block by skilled masons. The Hewitt drawings called for towers of different heights, so the roofline would feel like a story told in steps. The windows were framed for both views and airflow. Throughout the design, small heart shapes appeared in stone carvings, railings, and tile patterns, not loud or silly, but quiet symbols of purpose. This was a monument to love. Inside, the plan balanced public and private spaces. The ground level welcomed visitors with a grand hall, dining rooms, and sitting rooms. The second level held family bedrooms, a master suite for George and Louise, and comfortable guest rooms. The basement concealed modern systems, kitchens, storage, mechanical rooms, and tunnels that let staff move unseen between buildings and reach the powerhouse in any weather. Outside, Louise worked closely with landscapers to set the gardens. She wanted formal lines, low hedges, geometric beds, and fountains that caught the sun, but also quiet corners where people could read or talk. The swan pond was placed for calm views from the main rooms. A dovecote added movement and sound, wings, coos, and signs of life around stone. Illness changes the schedule. By 1901, Louise felt unusually tired and short of breath. At first, she ignored it. The Waldorf Astoria still demanded decisions, and Hart Island needed her eye. But doctors finally told the truth in 1902. She suffered from tuberculosis or possibly heart disease. Records are unclear. Treatments were limited. Rest, fresh air, light activity. The Thousand Islands air might help, but there was no cure. Even ill, Louise remained involved. Workers built temporary ramps so she could reach upper floors without climbing. She reviewed tiles, wallpapers, and light fixtures from chairs placed near windows. She chose fabrics and furniture styles, often from catalogs, photographs, and samples brought to her bedside. The castle was still hers in spirit, even as her body slowed down. George pushed the work forward. By late 1903, most interiors were far along. The gardens were planted, systems were being tested. The last big push would run through 1904, and then, on February 14, 1905, he would walk Louise through a finished home. But in January 1904, her strength failed. Stop all construction. On January 7, 1904, Louise Augusta Carr Boldt died in Manhattan. George Jr., 24, and Clover, 20, were with her. The death certificate listed heart failure. Whether the heart failed because of lung disease or long-term weakness, the result was the same. George sent the telegram. On Hart Island, men put down their tools. The castle stood about 90% complete. The exterior finished, windows and doors installed, most rooms plastered and floored, some already furnished. The yacht house was ready. The Ulster Tower had hosted parties. The powerhouse could run. The gardens were in and waiting for spring. George never reversed the order. He did not come back to the island. Some newspapers hinted he may have visited once later, but the consistent story says he kept away for the rest of his life. Work had been for Louise. Without Louise, finishing felt wrong. Life after the island, work in New York and Philadelphia didn't stop because grief had come. The new Bellevue Stratford Hotel, costing around $8 million, was opening in 1904 and needed attention. The Waldorf Astoria remained America's most important hotel. George returned to these duties, perhaps because work gave shape to his days. He still summered in the Thousand Islands, but chose Wellesley Island, not Hart Island. He could see the castle across the water and chose not to step onto its shore. He continued helping young people pay for college. Sources say dozens and perhaps more than 75 over his lifetime. He supported charities that Louise had loved. He spoke little about the castle. On December 5, 1916, George Boldt died of a heart attack in his Waldorf suite. He was 65. His funeral paused traffic on Fifth Avenue. The New York Times praised him as the man who shaped the modern hotel. He was buried beside Louise at Woodlawn Cemetery in the Bronx. His estate, valued around $15 million then, went to George Jr. and Clover. With it came Hart Island and the castle that had been started for their mother. It was not their dream. In 1918, they sold the island. A new owner opens the gates. The buyer was Edward John Noble from Gouverneur, New York, owner of Beechnut, and the businessman who helped make Lifesavers candy famous. He saw potential in the castle's mystery. Newspapers had already told the story of love and loss. Tour boats passed the island daily. He imagined a hotel, a resort, or a paid attraction. But he did not invest in finishing or guarding the property. Instead, he allowed visitors to come freely, often with no admission and little supervision. This choice seemed friendly. It was, in truth, dangerous for a building with open windows, missing locks, and unfinished rooms. Harsh winters cracked stone and warped wood. Graffiti crawled across plaster. People stripped copper pipes and wiring for resale. Decorative metal and carved wood disappeared piece by piece. In 1939, fireworks set the powerhouse roof on fire, leaving blackened stone. In 1942, during World War II, Hart Island was stripped of iron and steel, weakening parts of the structure. Louise's Italian gardens grew wild. The Swan Pond turned stagnant. Even the yacht house on Wellesley Island started to sag with leaks and broken windows. The Ulster Tower survived better than most, thanks to its odd angles and strong masonry, but vandals still shattered glass and damaged details. By the 1950s and 1960s, Hart Island looked like a romantic ruin out of a storybook, beautiful from far away, broken up close. Photographs showed vines crawling out of empty windows and trees growing where furniture should have been. People called it haunting. Engineers called it unsafe. $1, a promise, and a plan. When Edward Noble died in 1958, the E.J. Noble Foundation inherited the island but did little to save it. As damage grew, the risk of total loss grew with it. In the 1970s, the foundation looked for someone, anyone, who could rescue the place. In 1977, the Thousand Islands Bridge Authority stepped forward. The authority ran bridges between the United States and Canada and cared about the region's economy. They believed a restored Boldt Castle could bring jobs and pride back to local towns. The deal was unusual. The foundation would transfer Hart Island for $1 if the Bridge Authority agreed that every dollar of visitor revenue, tickets, tours, souvenirs, would be spent on the castle's restoration and upkeep. No government funds. The site had to pay for itself. The new owners walked into a tough reality. 73 years of weather and vandalism had done deep harm. Rough estimates said $15 million would be needed just to stabilize and begin restoration. Still, they signed. It was time to save the castle, reopening as a work in progress. Over the winter of 1977-78, crews made the island safe, bracing weak walls, patching urgent roof leaks, fencing dangerous areas, and setting temporary supports. In spring 1978, Hart Island reopened, not as a polished attraction, but as an honest one. Visitors saw the damage and the repairs at the same time. Scaffolding against carved stone, piles of materials beside crumbling walls, and people in hard hats doing careful work. The public responded with curiosity and care. That first season, around 99,000 visitors came, far more than expected. Their admission fees went straight into new roofs, stronger structures, and basic security. A virtuous cycle began. The more people came, the more work could be done. The more progress people saw, the more they wanted to return. The restoration team chose a smart philosophy. Some rooms would be finished exactly as George and Louise intended, based on Hewitt drawings, early photographs, and original materials left on site. Other rooms would be left unfinished on purpose to show what stop all construction really meant. This balance told the truth. Love built the castle, and loss interrupted it. What the island teaches. By the early 1980s, visitors could walk through restored spaces on the first floor and then climb to raw rooms above where graffiti and exposed brick told the decades-long story of abandonment. Down at the river, the powerhouse rose again, with a new roof and exhibits explaining early electricity. Across the water, the yacht house regained its strength and later displayed antique boats from the Antique Boat Museum in Clayton, reminding everyone how central boating had been to life here. Outside, crews rebuilt the Italian gardens in Louise's spirit. They repaired fountain pools, laid paths, planted hedges, and chose flowers to bloom in careful waves through the season. It was not a perfect copy. Too much had been lost for that. But the feeling, order, light, and quiet beauty returned. The message of Hart Island began to shine more clearly with each season. Some treasures are worth saving, not because they were finished, but because they tell the truth about love, ambition, and time. Rebuilding the dream. The Bridge Authority treated the island not as a tourist trap, but as a living restoration site. Workers and historians studied old blueprints, diaries, and photographs from the early 1900s. Every stone and beam told a story. When possible, they reused original materials. When something had rotted beyond repair, they copied it exactly, using the same type of granite and the same joinery methods. The first goal was stability, patching roofs, sealing leaks, and keeping walls upright. Once the castle was safe to enter, the team began the long, patient work of recreation. Broken windows were replaced with glass made to look slightly uneven, like the panes of 1900. Iron railings were recast using molds taken from surviving fragments. Carpenters traced surviving pieces of trim to reproduce missing sections. It wasn't just about fixing a building, it was about respecting a memory. The workers knew they were restoring not just a home, but a love story that had frozen in time. The powerhouse lives. Again, down by the water stood the powerhouse, one of the most striking buildings on the island. From a distance it looked like a medieval tower, but inside it had once been filled with roaring machinery that produced electricity for the entire estate. The fire of 1939 had left it black and hollow. In the early 1980s, crews rebuilt the roof, reinforced the stonework, and installed a small museum inside. Exhibits explained how George Boldt had planned for modern conveniences that were far ahead of his time. Electric lights in every room, central heating, and telephones. Visitors could now see photos of the original engines, learn about the fire that destroyed them, and imagine the hum of power that once flowed from that building. The rebuilt powerhouse symbolized renewal. Fire had nearly destroyed it, yet its stone shell had survived. In many ways, it mirrored the Boldt story itself, devastated by loss but still standing, still capable of light. The yacht house. Across the water. Across the channel on Wellesley Island, the yacht house had weathered decades of storms. Its roof leaked and its wood had turned gray with age. Restorers stripped away the rot and replaced beams while keeping the original shape, a vast structure large enough to store boats 3 stories tall. When the building reopened, it housed gleaming wooden boats from the early 1900s, including George Boldt's own houseboat, the La Duchesse. Inside, the air smelled of varnish and river water, and the echo of footsteps mixed with the quiet creak of old timber. The space once again felt alive, not as a private boathouse, but as a museum celebrating the region's boating heritage. Gardens for Louise. While stonemasons worked on the castle, landscape artists turned their attention to Louise's gardens. Old photographs showed rows of hedges, curving paths, and fountains arranged like lines in a poem. But time had erased most of them. Only broken statues and cracked stone pools remained. Using those photos as guides, workers replanted the island with tulips, roses, and lilacs. They repaired the fountains, restored terraces, and rebuilt the stone steps leading down to the river. Slowly, the island began to bloom again. The gardens were not identical to the originals, but their spirit was the same: peaceful, colorful, and welcoming. Today, when visitors walk through these paths, they can almost picture Louise choosing flowers and adjusting the edges of the beds, just as she had done more than a century ago. Room by room, memory by memory. Inside the castle, each room presented a new challenge. The grand hall, once open to the wind, was restored first. Craftsmen repaired the sweeping staircase and recreated the carved balustrades using oak from the same region as the original. Plaster artists studied old samples of paint to discover the original shades of cream and gold that Louise had chosen. The library was refitted with dark wood paneling and shelves lined with period books. The drawing room glowed again under crystal chandeliers. Bedrooms were dressed with linens and furniture appropriate to the era. Every object was chosen to tell a story, not of royalty, but of affection and taste. Even the servants' areas were rebuilt to show how the household would have worked day to day. Narrow staircases, polished brass bells, and long hallways for quiet footsteps. Visitors could finally imagine the island alive again, filled with cooks, gardeners, guests, and the laughter of a family. Unfinished floors, honest history. The upper stories, however, were left much as they had been found: bare walls, exposed brick, and graffiti from decades past. This decision was intentional. Curators believed that leaving part of the castle unfinished told the story better than any restoration could. Walking through these empty spaces, visitors can see how far the dream had come and how suddenly it stopped. Names scratched into plaster, some from 1920, others from the 1960s, form an accidental timeline of fascination. The rawness reminds everyone that beauty can survive even when perfection never arrives. The rebirth of a legend. By the late 1980s, Boldt Castle was drawing crowds from around the world. The restoration was working, not only structurally, but emotionally. What had been a ruin now stood as a living monument. Tour boats brought visitors from both the American and Canadian sides of the river. Shops in Alexandria Bay flourished. Each summer, ticket sales funded new repairs. Stonemasons rebuilt cracked arches. Electricians installed safe modern wiring hidden behind old walls. Plumbers replaced corroded pipes. Slowly, the castle regained its dignity. By the early 2000s, nearly $30 million has been reinvested into the island, all from visitors' pockets as promised. No tax dollars, no corporate sponsors, just people moved by the story of George and Louise. Weddings and wishes. Today, Hart Island has become one of the most romantic destinations in North America. Every summer, hundreds of couples choose to marry there. Some exchange vows in the gardens, others inside the restored rooms or in the Ulster Tower, where music once echoed through the circular halls. The irony is touching. A place born from heartbreak now witnesses celebrations of new love almost every day. Couples often tell guides that they chose Boldt Castle because they wanted a setting that felt timeless, proof that love, even when interrupted, can last forever in memory. Each wedding adds another layer to the story, transforming private tragedy into shared hope. A living classroom. Boldt Castle is also a classroom without walls. School groups visit to learn about architecture, engineering, and social history. Teachers use it to explain the Gilded Age, a time when American wealth and ambition reached for the same heights as European nobility. Students see how an immigrant like George Boldt could rise from cleaning tables to building an empire of hospitality. They learn that success is rarely simple, that fortune cannot protect against loss, and that dreams, even unfinished ones, can inspire generations. For local families, the castle represents more than history. It's part of their identity. The restoration provided steady work for carpenters, masons, landscapers, and boat operators. Tourism dollars built restaurants, shops, and small hotels all along the river. The love story that began with two people now supports an entire community. The meaning of incompletion. The most striking thing about Boldt Castle is that it remains intentionally incomplete. This choice gives it a rare emotional honesty. If it had been finished exactly as George planned, it would simply be another grand estate. But the halted construction, the empty upper floors, and the silent staircases remind visitors of something deeper. That life can change without warning, and even the richest hearts can break. Every person who visits the island stands in the same silence that once filled George's life after Louise died. The castle's unfinished walls say what words cannot. Love is powerful, but it doesn't always get a happy ending. Yet even unfinished love can leave beauty behind. Hidden paths and quiet work. A successful estate runs on quiet work. The main corridors were built for guests, but the tunnels and service stairs were built for staff. Supplies could move without crossing fancy rooms. Coal for the powerhouse traveled through a protected passage so that storms could not slow the flow. Kitchens were arranged like a careful map. Cold storage, prep tables, pastry, dishwashing, and dessert stations, each with its own rhythm. The goal was beauty that looked effortless because the hard work happened out of sight. The staff areas were not sloppy or cheap. They were plain, sturdy, and clean because George respected good work. He had started in a kitchen and never forgot what it felt like to carry plates until your hands shook. He planned this house to be a place where workers could do their jobs well. Light as a design tool. Electric light was still a marvel in 1900. The powerhouse allowed the castle to carry that marvel into every corner. Louise understood light better than most designers of her time. In restaurant dining rooms, she had learned how a lamp can change a face and a mood. On the island, she used that wisdom for comfort. Large rooms use chandeliers, not only from the center, but sometimes in pairs to avoid hard shadows. Wall sconces along corridors kept light at eye level for safety and calm. Reading lamps were placed at the ends of sofas and beside chairs so that guests did not have to strain. Outdoors, small lights along paths guided evening walks without blasting the gardens in harsh brightness. The whole plan said, "You are welcome, you are seen, you are safe." Water and weather. Life on a river teaches patience. Some mornings, the water lay flat like glass. On others, wind pushed waves against the seawalls. In winter, the St. Lawrence turned white and hard. Ice pressed at the stone edges and made long, cracking sounds at night. The castle had to answer to all these moods. That is why the foundations were deep and the walls thick. That is why the roofs were pitched to shed snow, and slate was chosen to survive the cycle of freeze and thaw. The garden team learned the island's microclimates. They knew which beds got the morning sun first and which corners stayed cool in afternoon shade. They picked plants that could tolerate wind. They laid paths that drained well. They placed benches where you could feel the breeze without getting blasted by it. Every choice respected the power of water and weather. The Ulster Tower's secret joy. The Ulster Tower might look like a guard post from the outside, but it was built for joy. In the basement, the bowling alley stretched smooth and straight. You can almost hear the tumble of pins in your head. Above it, the billiard room and library created a calm pause. The upper shell room was made for dancing, and for the kind of laughter that fills a circle. It was a place to be playful without walking through the more formal rooms of the main castle. You could throw a party in the tower on a rainy day and let the rest of the house stay quiet. You could also invite visiting friends to stay there and give them privacy. The tower proved that a castle does not have to be stiff. It can be fun. A partnership. Written in stone. From the first day at the Philadelphia Club to the careful design of the Waldorf Astoria, George and Louise worked as equals. He understood operations, budgets, and flow. She understood how people feel in a space and how beauty can be both simple and strong. On Hart Island, those talents blended. The result was not just a symbol of wealth, but a home built with care. That is why the story hurts. The castle is a record of teamwork, and the team ended too soon. Each detail reminds us of what they could do together. Each unfinished room reminds us of what they did not get to finish. Why the order stood. Many people have wondered why George did not finish the castle after Louise died. He had the money. He had the crew. Most of the work was done. Finishing would have been practical, yet he refused. The answer sits in the nature of the gift. The house was meant for her. The moment she was gone, the purpose was gone. For George, finishing without her may have felt like pretending. He was not a man who pretended. He kept helping others. He kept running the hotels. He supported students and workers who needed a break. But the castle stayed silent. That was the truth he could live with. The long quiet and the cost of neglect. Decades of open doors and careless hands left wounds. Graffiti makers did not mean to break history, but they did. Thieves who pried out copper and hardware probably told themselves the building was already lost. Weather did not ask permission. It invaded slowly, one leak and one crack at a time. By the 1970s, saving the castle looked like a big bet with low odds. The E.J. Noble Foundation could have sold the island for private development, but it chose a different route. It looked for a public partner who could save the place in a way that welcomed everyone. The Thousand Islands Bridge Authority stepped in with a promise that was both bold and humble. Open the gates, tell the truth, and spend every ticket dollar on the work, crafted as an act of respect. When restoration started, the first rule was honesty. Replace what must be replaced. Repair what can be repaired. Leave proof of the past where it teaches. That is why some graffiti remains on the upper floors. It is not there to celebrate vandalism. It is there to show what happens when we stop caring. It keeps new caretakers humble. Craftsmen used old methods whenever they made sense. Mortar mixes matched the original color and texture, so joints looked natural, not bright white. Wood species were chosen to move and age like the historic pieces. Hardware was cast from molds taken from surviving hinges and handles. Where modern building codes demanded stronger structures, steel and anchors were hidden inside walls so the historic look stayed true. The economics of memory. A project like this needs money every year. Roofs must be checked, stone must be repointed, paint must be refreshed, gardens must be trimmed and replanted. Weddings and ticket sales keep the cycle healthy. The gift shop and cafe do the same. None of it feels like cheap tourism because the mission is clear. Visitors know their spending keeps the island alive. They can see the work happening when they arrive. Local businesses return that energy to the region. A boat tour hires more captains. A hotel hires more housekeepers. A restaurant buys more local produce. A family that came for the castle stays longer to visit a museum, a lighthouse, or a park. The story of George and Louise becomes part of the story of the Thousand Islands today. Comparisons that clarify, not compete. People often compare the castle with other famous houses. The Breakers in Newport is a masterpiece of marble and order. Biltmore in North Carolina is vast and complete. Those places show what finished wealth looks like. Hart Island shows something different. It shows the edge where wealth meets grief. It is not better or worse. It simply tells another truth. That truth is hard, but it is kind. It says that love can build great things and still get interrupted. It says that a broken plan can teach as much as a finished one. It says that community can pick up what a family could not carry anymore. Nora La Duchesse and the Measure of a Life. At the yacht house, you learn about the La Duchesse, the long houseboat where George and Louise had planned to travel through the islands. They never took those long trips together, yet the boat still exists, cared for across the water at a museum, and the yacht house holds other wooden boats that shine like polished apples. Wood and water always tell the truth about time. They require attention or they fade. The Bridge Authority has given that attention year after year. A life is not measured only by what got finished. It is measured by what was attempted and by how others felt in the spaces you shaped. George made spaces where people felt important and safe. Louise made them beautiful without making them stiff. That legacy does not crumble. It repeats every time a hotel manager remembers to dim a light for warmth, or a designer chooses flowers because a table deserves life. Education. That sticks. Young visitors learn not just facts but patterns. They learn that design is a series of choices with reasons behind them. They learn that engineering is problem-solving under pressure. They learn that money can build, but attention keeps what money built from falling apart. They learn that history is not far away. It breathes in places like this, and it needs caretakers. Teachers like Hart Island because it crosses subjects. It touches literature when students write about silence in the unfinished rooms. It touches math when they estimate roof areas or calculate the weight of stone. It touches civics when they talk about public and private roles in saving a landmark. It touches ethics when they discuss vandalism and stewardship. Why leaving some rooms? Empty is right. There will always be voices that say, finish it all. Those voices love neat endings, but the castle is powerful because it accepts the truth. Finishing everything would turn the house into a stage set. Leaving part of it raw turns it into a lesson. The empty rooms do not shame the project. They defend it. They say, this is what happened, and we will not lie. Curators sometimes add simple signs to explain why a space is unfinished. They show a photo from 1903 beside a photo from 1977, and another from today. You see the fall and the rise. You see that the current state is a choice, not a failure. You see care. The families who come back. Some visitors return each year. They bring children who once rode in strollers and now lean on railings taller than their shoulders. They choose different paths each time. One year, they focus on gardens. Another year, on boats. Another on the powerhouse exhibits. Hart Island supports that kind of slow learning. It rewards repeat attention in the way a favorite book does. You notice a new detail with each pass. Locals come in shoulder seasons when the crowds are smaller. They see the first blooms of late spring and the last colors of early fall. The castle belongs to them in a special way. It is their skyline, their workplace, their proof that small towns can carry big stories. Quiet moments that stay with you. Every great site offers a moment that stays in the mind. On Hart Island, one such moment happens in the late afternoon on a calm day. You stand on a terrace. The light turns amber. The river slides by with a softness that slows your breathing. A boat hums far away. You rest your hand on the warm stone and think about George placing hearts in the design because he wanted love to be visible even in the details. You do not need a guide to explain it. the place explains itself. Another such moment is in the unfinished third-floor room where a single window looks west. You see the grain of the wood floor. You see an old nail bent over by a worker who did not want to waste it. You see the signature of someone who came through when the building was open and lonely, scrawled in the wrong place at the wrong time. Yet here we are, together, and the room is clean, safe, and honest. You understand why the restoration kept it this way. It carries a kind of holiness that a perfect finish would erase. The wider river. Story. The St. Lawrence River connects more than lakes. It connects histories. For centuries it carried native peoples, explorers, soldiers, and traders. In the Gilded Age, it carried tourists and tycoons. Today it carries families on vacation, anglers with patient hats, and wedding parties who step off boats with careful steps so the dresses do not catch. Hart Island sits in that current, a fixed point in a moving stream. If you look upriver, you see small islands with single cottages, flags snapping in the breeze, children paddling in circles. Downriver, you see bigger islands with summer communities, docks lined with kayaks, and porches hung with string lights. The castle is not an alien object set apart. It is part of this chain. It shares the water with everyone else. Care that never ends. Preservation is not a project with a finish line. It is a habit. Roofs will always need repair after storms. Mortar will always need repointing after a harsh winter. Paint will always fade in the sun. Wood will always swell and shrink. The Bridge Authority plans for this. Budgets include maintenance first, new restoration second. That is how you keep promises. That is how you make sure future kids still get to press hands against cool stone and look up in wonder. Names that matter. When people tell the story, they often focus on George Boldt and Louise Boldt, as they should. But other names deserve bold type too. William Waldorf Astor and John Jacob Astor IV created the feud that gave George his biggest stage at the Waldorf Astoria. Henry Hardenberg drew the lines that made those hotels handsome and workable. Oscar Cherky, known as Oscar of the Waldorf, invented food ideas that still live on menus today. Abner Bartlett noticed a talented manager and opened a door. E. Kirk Hart gave the first cottage that stood where the castle now rises. Edward John Noble owned the island during the long, quiet years and, even with mistakes made, kept it together long enough for someone else to save it. History is a chain. Break one link and the story bends in a new direction. Put all the links together and you see how a busboy from Prussia ended up shaping a river island in New York. A castle that teaches courage. What does this place ask of us? It asks us to be brave enough to love deeply, even when life is uncertain. It asks us to build good things while we can. It asks us to care for what we inherit, even if we were not the ones who created it. It asks us to tell the truth when a story is painful and to keep telling it until it helps someone. The staff who unlock gates each morning, sweep stairs, prune roses, answer questions, fix leaks, guide tours, and close the books at night are part of that courage. They choose again and again to keep faith with a promise made in 1977 that the island would be restored and kept open for all. What you carry home. When visitors leave, they carry more than photos. They carry a simple understanding that changes how they see their own lives. They notice the way light falls in their kitchen at home and think of Louise. They see a hard-working server in a restaurant and think of George starting as a busboy. They pass an old building with boarded windows and think, someone should save that because they know it is possible. Some carry home a wedding ring and a new last name. Some carry a brochure folded into a book as a bookmark. Some carry a child on a sleepy shoulder. All carry the river air in their clothes and a memory of stone that holds warmth. The last. Look back. From the departing boat, people often turn for one last look. The castle seems smaller from the water than it did up close, yet somehow it feels larger in meaning. It is no longer a pile of towers and windows. It is a story about work, beauty, grief, and care. It is the proof that a gift meant for one person can become a gift for many without losing its heart. The engine hums, the wake spreads, the island slips behind. But the lesson stays. Start what matters. Share what you can. Be honest about what you cannot finish. Leave room for others to continue the work.